Centre for Creative and Immersive XR. So this is where the magic happens. This is where the incredible team have put together an evening showcasing just a few insights into some of the research and the innovation that goes on here across the centre. So the Centre for Creative and Immersive XR, we call it CCIXR because it's much shorter to say. We're a range of different facilities. Effectively, it's an immersive toolbox. So if you've got a challenge that you want to see how immersive technologies can be used to address that challenge, that's what we're here for. So we exist to lower the barrier to entry and to enable businesses and organizations to come to understand what immersive technologies is and to see how that can help them in the future. We work across a wide range of sectors, so you'll see different projects this evening you'll hear about theatre. We'll go to a forest with my friend Maggie and we'll show you a little insight into the forest. We'll talk about defence projects, we will talk about heritage projects, talk about maritime projects, all of these different sectors. It's a toolbox, so you can apply it to any different challenge, any different project. We're very industry-based here, so our students as well as our staff collaborate on a wide different range of activities and projects.
I'm Professor Hui Yu. I'm part of the School of Creative Technologies and head up the Visual Computing Group. We are filming today at the CCIXR in the motion capture studio. My team and I work in the field of advanced AI, creative technologies, and visual computing. Our research is to create more natural human-machine interactions through our unique and world-leading techniques for processing and analyzing visual data. Essentially, we use motion sensors to collect complex facial muscle movements and convert into facial expressions. We then use advanced techniques, a mix of applied mathematics, computer graphics, visual computing, and computer vision, to develop algorithms that allow us to create and simulate 4D models of human faces. We can also manipulate to showcase 3D facial models. Even if we have simple information, for example, 2D photograph, we can still manipulate them to show the 3D facial expression. The potential for this kind of technology is exceptional. Realism in computer gaming in terms of virtual reality application will take on a whole new dimension. We are the only people in the world to use the motion sensors under the VR system to map facial muscles movement into facial expression in real time. We also develop AI and creative technologies to generate facial expressions from any given facial images. The biggest industry for this tech is security. Police will be able to generate facial expressions of suspects to match with the facial expression recognition system. It can also have the huge positive applications in healthcare. People with Bell's palsy can learn visual movement through using this tech. People with autistic spectrum disorder can learn facial expression and social interactions through using this tech as well.
I'd like to thank Hui for putting together that fascinating insight into his research. Every time I watch that video, I think I learn something more, and it just blows my mind every time I hear about all the different applications for his work. We are the only facility of that type in the UK to bring together volumetrics, motion capture, and many of the systems that you saw there in Hui's video as background. You'll get a chance to see those systems for yourself in just a moment. But I want to move on to a current project that's dear to a lot of our hearts here at the moment. So I want to talk to you about enabling XR enterprise. What we're talking about here is empowering heritage, visitor attractions, museums to actually get under the hood of these technologies and to see how it can work for them, what it means to them, and what the real power of this immersive technology is for them. So I don't think you want to hear it from me, though. I think you should hear it from someone much better placed to say that. So if we could run the video of Dominic Jones, the CEO of the Mary Rose Formulina, please.
I'm Dominic Jones. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Mary Rose Trust, which basically means I'm responsible for everything that the charity does, including looking after this amazing museum, an amazing collection, an amazing ship that we have here in Portsmouth. We've had some fantastic collaboration with the University of Portsmouth and their Centre for Creative Immersive Technology, looking at how we can bring the ship to life and tell the stories and almost recreate what it was like to be underwater when they were finding and searching for the Mary Rose 40 to 50 years ago, and then also bringing the Mary Rose back to life and showing people what it was like in her heyday and how the ship sailed. Fantastic projects. This October is 40 years since the Mary Rose was raised. It's a phenomenal anniversary. It was the biggest underwater salvation that's ever happened, and it was watched by over 60 million people, first ever underwater broadcast. But what's really exciting is, through this technology with the University of Portsmouth, we're able to recreate some of those moments. So we've got this amazing hollow fan, which is a fan, so like an air-conditioned fan, that then has a projection of a holographic on it. And what's fantastic, it shows the Mary Rose ship, the wreck, and then it brings the ship back into the water, brings it to life, shows it in all its glory, and then goes back to the wreck of the ship. So you get a real sense of, when you're looking at what's left of the Mary Rose, what she was like in her heyday, what she was like before she sank in 1545 in the Battle of the Solent. So it's a fantastic way to bring things to life, and it's a great technology. The bit I love most about all of this is actually the leap when you're down and you're diving on the Mary Rose and you're seeing below the Solent. And I remember sitting watching one of our divers, so our head of interpretation, our head of research, who 40 years ago were diving and raising the Mary Rose, and it's the first time I've ever seen anything that they say is actually lifelike and really resembles what it was like there. And then I knew that we were onto a winner and onto something that was really authentic but really game-changing.
But shall we have a little bit of a closer look at the Mary Rose? So this was put together by our incredible team, but to tell you a little bit more about it, I'd like to pass you over to Dr. Brett Stevens, who's been our academic lead on this part of the project.
My remit tonight is to talk to you about how we put together this sort of facility. And I think the short answer is a bit of luck, some hard work, and a sort of desire between us and also the Mary Rose team to sort of look at why we are so involved in the creative and cultural industries. The luck was for me, really, because I didn't have to do the hard work. It was brilliant. So I think the first thing I'd like to do is to thank the team that we've been working on X3. Mark Cook and Harriet Ball are over there. And they were the ones that have guided this production. But it takes a large team of people. There was over a dozen people that have worked on this sort of project right the way from the start. We were lucky as well with working with the Mary Rose. The Mary Rose as an organisation have been absolutely fantastic. They have a massive collection of heritage objects, but they also understand the usefulness of digital interpretations. And we started with a blank sheet of paper and spent weeks working through what we could possibly do. And they took a leap of faith, really, in what we were doing, because although most organisations tend to focus on either explicitly simulations or very technical renderings of heritage objects, or on the flip side, sort of games for young children, the Mary Rose wanted something that was aimed at sort of young adults, which is quite a risk because we have to talk in a different language. So our first conversations weren't around technology and games. It was around film and Stranger Things and all these sort of ideas that people in their sort of 20s and 30s would be familiar with, you know, in their everyday life. And we used that as a sort of springboard to take what could have been a reconstruction and moved it into a reimagining. Okay, and a reimagining is a really important distinction between this project and a lot of other projects. Because although what you see behind me at the moment is a scan of the Mary Rose wreck as it is on the seabed, I'm sure Don won't mind me encouraging you all to go to the Mary Rose Museum, and there you'll see that actually it's not about what you see under the sea. Oh God, I didn't think that phrase through. But it's about how the divers could piece together the ship as it was from what you can see is a sort of bare wreckage. It's the imagination of the divers and archaeologists and how they could interpret what they were seeing. Okay, and that's what we worked through. It's a tall ask to try and sort of picture that. So the first part of the project really was to put together what we call concept art, where we sort of draw it all out and show sort of interesting pictures of colours and things. And we had some very interesting conversations around colour. You know, our natural instinct to think of the Solent is brown, but the Mary Rose has a fantastic archaeologist, Alex Hildred, who's here this evening, and she met with us twice a week for months and months. One set of that, 2 weeks, I think it was making sure that we had the right green for the sea, because it isn't how you think of it. You know, this is an actual representation of what it was like. The sea was green when they were diving on it. It was fascinating listening to the stories of the Mary Rose, and as we tour around, you'll see some cuttlefish, Egbert and Ethelred, who were named by the son of Margaret Rule, and listening to the stories about how spider crabs used to sit on the divers and try and pinch the bubbles as they go, which I found fascinating, but apparently creeps everybody else out. So when you actually look through the seabed part, you'll see that all of those stories have been sort of incorporated in this sort of process. It has been a fascinating project and quite a productive one, because although we're looking at this in terms of one experience tonight, we actually took a technical decision at the beginning of the project. So instead of creating one sort of animation that is a fly-through which you look at, we've actually built the whole of this experience into a game engine, so you can kind of play it. You know? And that has allowed us to do quite a lot of interesting things. So this experience that you're looking at tonight is actually a bespoke one just for this stage. It's currently running live on a game engine on a computer over there somewhere. And at any moment they could stop it, turn it around, flip it, walk through it, look at it from a different direction. Okay, and we've used that to create multiple different versions of this experience. So this is a bespoke one for tonight. Dom, again, probably won't mind me plugging the Mary Rose Museum. Go visit it, folks. But they've got at least 2 set up over there at the moment. We have a few other versions inbound as well, so that we can tailor these experiences for different audiences and give them a longevity beyond just the hardware, because it's the sort of the software and the technical artistic work that takes the time and takes the money. I've probably talked for too long already. This is not the only project that you'll hear about this evening. So if we return to the studio, I'd like to invite Dr. Stephen Pearce up to talk to us about his project, which was with the Aspects Gallery.
Hello, can everyone hear me okay? Hello. All right, I'd like to thank everyone for inviting me to come today to talk. So over the last few months, I've been collaborating with Aspects Portsmouth, which are based down in Gunwharf. For those of you that don't know, Aspects Portsmouth is a community arts kind of space and hub that promotes local art and culture within the city of Portsmouth. Compared to the other XRE projects that have been running over recent months, the Aspects collaboration has been a bit of a wild card. In many of the other projects, the university has basically been treating other organisations as clients. They've been delivering content and materials for them. When working with an arts institution, it felt a bit wrong to do that. So what the university and Aspects did is we commissioned an artist to create a new work that explored some of the technologies that they wouldn't normally have access to, and what we've got here today with us. The artist that we selected goes by the name of Karanjit Panasar, and he's most known for creating films. And the film he decided to make was based around an iconic area of Portsmouth, Clarence Pier. So what we're now seeing on stage is part of a dilapidated, warped version of Clarence Pier. The film itself, Clarence Pier, is currently showing at Aspects until the end of December. I'm going to plug it several times throughout this talk, I imagine. Now, one of the things that's really interesting about working and commissioning with an artist using these technologies is how do you constrain and control an artist in a creative way when they've got a deadline. You can imagine when an artist gets given lots of brand new toys, you can imagine the temptation is to either panic and think, oh, what do I do with all of this stuff? I can't decide what to do. On the other hand, they might decide that they want to do everything. So our kind of job at university as a team was to find a sensible way of supporting and nurturing Karanjit's enthusiasm, should we say, and turn it into something that's a bit more practical. Now, some of the technologies that are on this floor were used extensively throughout the film, but the problem we had very early on was because this technology is so new and so fresh, people aren't quite aware of the pipelines and the time it takes to create things. So next door, we've got a lovely green space that you'll be invited to see shortly, called volumetric capture, and in there you can have actors, musicians, performers, walking around, performing in a space, and you record them. You're then given 3D models and animations that you can then drop into virtual environments, like you're seeing behind me. Now, you'd think, oh, that's, you know, you could do things like that on your iPhone, it must be quite quick and easy. It's not, unfortunately. So to put some perspective on that, recording 1 minute of an actor in that space might take 1 or 2 days to kind of process. And you can imagine if someone makes a mistake, it takes a long time to rectify. And we had 6 months to complete this project, and Karanjit wanted to make a 35-minute film. So as you can probably imagine, it wasn't really feasible. So what we did instead is we took the kind of idea for the narrative that he had and based it around several aspects of technology in the space. Now, one of the nice things about Karanjit's work as an artist and as a filmmaker is he often exposes the creative process in his films. Okay, so if anyone goes to aspects and has seen any of his work previously, which I recommend you do, there'll often be shots in his films that pull back and you see the cameramen, you see the crowd, you see the making process. And we did exactly the same thing here. Okay, so if you're interested in seeing how some of this technology works, not only in that film do you see people in a virtual space, but you also get glimpses of how it was captured, how it was recorded. Okay, that includes the volumetric capture next door. It also includes moments where we 3D scanned the actors and then had motion capture actors coming in and then puppeting their virtual avatars, which was interesting because we did that remotely over Zoom when Karanjit was 250 miles away, and it pushed lots of technologies to the limit. Now, as you can imagine, working with an artist can be tricky because artists tend to push things to the limit. They like trying to break things. Now, one of the things that's really interesting about the film is that Karanjit really wanted to push the limits of the technology. So very early on, he quickly realized in volumetric capture, for example, because you've got all these cameras around the space, it can't really capture things close to the floor. So if there's something low to the floor, it glitches out, it bubbles, it creates artifacts, it shimmers, you get these unnatural motions. And naturally, lots of people think we'll stay away from that, we'll shoot people at head height in that space. Karanjit decided he wanted to shoot 10 minutes in volumetric with people sitting on the floor having a chat, to deliberately try and invoke and incite the limitations of that technology and then showcase it in the film. Okay? Now, whilst I could talk about the technology for hours and what we did, I don't really want to give away the film, but one thing I will say about the film is that it's cyclical. It has no beginning, it has no middle, and no end. Okay? It loops continuously. Now, you can imagine an artist that lives, a couple hundred miles away in Leeds. We were a bit concerned about carting him down into Portsmouth and getting him to write a film about the city without being fully immersed in the space. So Karanjit did what anyone in their kind of mid-20s would do before he came down here, and he went on Facebook. He went on social media and reached out to message boards to find out what people thought about the city and about Clarence Pier in particular. What he ended up doing was taking a collection of stories that were then relayed to him. And in the film, there are 4 characters, each with their own stories and narratives. But what you might think as being a narrative and one person's story in that film is actually a falsification. It's actually been created by lots of stories. So every person is telling a story about Clarence Pier from the perspective of up to 10 other people. Okay? Now, when you combine that with the fact that the film is kind of cyclical, it really raises the question, who does the original phrase come from? Where does the film start? Where does the film end? What's real? What isn't real? But ultimately, it raises the question, does it really matter who the author is when you're there showcasing this brand new exciting technology? Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. And I'd like to point out at this point that the X3 project actually had 4 different strands of activity. So you've heard about 2 of the demonstrator projects, as we call them this evening. There are another 4. What we're going to do now is I'm going to invite you to watch a film, a motion capture reel, a show reel if you like, some of the projects we've worked on over the last couple of years. So the snippet you saw there of the motion capture reel is actually a collaboration with London Symphony Orchestra, where we actually worked with Sir Simon Rattle to motion capture his movements. But now I've been joined by some unusual colleagues on stage. So to tell you a little more about this, I would like to introduce Dr. Tom Garner.
I'm here to talk about sound as it's pertinent to extended reality, but I'm not here to talk about what you might think. I'm not here to talk about sound design techniques for extended reality experiences. I'm here to talk about how extended reality technology can be used to capture sound in a way that helps us to understand sound, and then to help us understand our human relationship with it, and then ultimately to understand ourselves better as human beings. Now, sound tends to be something which operates in the background of our daily lives. We don't tend to think a great deal about it, about the effect it has on us, but the reality is that it affects our thoughts, our feelings. It can influence the decisions that we make on a daily basis, can push us into certain directions. It can affect various aspects about how we feel about our homes, how we feel about our workplace environments, and research has shown that if you have so-called good sound in your life, it can dramatically affect your health, and it can affect your well-being as well. So even though we don't tend to think about it, it's an extremely powerful and prevalent force. So to better understand it could have some really fascinating implications. And I'm joined by these devices here. I didn't actually ask for this one, but they said it was much more photogenic, so they wanted it. So I may not talk about it at all and just leave it shrouded in mystery, and you can ask me about it later if you're interested. But this is an ambisonic binaural microphone. The binaural aspect is these little ears here, and that's basically to simulate the idea that obviously when we listen to sound in the real world, it very rarely goes directly into our ear canal. It bounces off our heads and our outer ear, our pinna, before it enters the ear canal. So this helps to capture a more realistic sound. But having this array of different microphones all embedded actually enables us to create a sense, or give the recording a sense of where the objects in the space that we're recording, where they are, what their localization is, what their position is. So if I was recording this now and there was a person talking over there, a dog barking over there, that was all captured on a single recording. And then say it was replayed in a virtual reality headset that could track my movements, I could walk around a space, I could walk around that sound field. If I wanted to listen to this dog a little bit more clearly, I could walk over to it. It would sound clearer, it would become louder. If I wanted to eavesdrop on that conversation, this recorded conversation, I could hear it better by going across the way. Now, I have to be careful with these because this one in particular is extremely expensive. As I keep reminding myself, if I knock that over, I'm in trouble. But there are also cheaper equivalents. I'm conscious I'm also wearing another microphone, but I'm not going to talk about that. This is also a binaural microphone, but it's conveniently set up into what looks just like a normal pair of headphones. So it's quite inconspicuous. I can wear it out in the world and no one knows what I'm doing. And what I tend to use it for is for sound walks, which is basically, as the name suggests, me walking around a place and using the binaural setup to record that place. And those recordings give me a sense of that place. They can tell me information about the people in that place, the systems in that place, the interactions in that place. But it can be used for, once we've got all of these sounds and these captures together, there's a number of interesting things they can be used for. One thing they can be used for is what's called telepresence, which is a sense of being present in somewhere other than where we are physically located. With these sound recordings of maybe a very different part of the world, maybe even a war-torn state, we could re-experience them very immersively, very vividly, and it could tell us an awful lot of rich information about that place. One of the other things that I'm looking into that I'm very, very fascinated is to do with what we call re-experiencing, which is similar to telepresence, but it's about time. So much as research has shown that there are
musical cues that can reignite memories in the brain, even reinforce long-lost pathways in the brain. These spatial recordings have the ability to potentially take that even further. We can use these to record our own personal sound worlds, creating like a sound photographic album, a book of sound memories, which we can then replay as time passes, and we can re-experience those moments that have been captured through that sound environment. We can walk through those memories within that sound environment, and the potential impacts for health and well-being. Obviously, this is my field, so I'm going to say it's exciting, but I think that's extremely exciting. Now, that is basically the last thing I want to talk about, and I wrote down a sign-off, but that's actually everything I wanted to say. I think the phrase was something along the lines of, this is a work in progress, so watch this space, or should I say, hear this space. I remembered it. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. I'd like to now talk about another project that we did last year. We collaborated with the Royal Shakespeare Company, with the Manchester International Festival, and Marshmallow Laser Feast to work on a piece called Dream. Now, this was during lockdown. It was in deepest, darkest lockdown, in fact, actually. You almost couldn't leave the house at this point in January to March of 2021. To give you a little insight into the project, I'm just going to run the trailer. Brings back lots of memories, but I think I'll always be extra fond of forests from now on. So perhaps could we go somewhere a little more fitting if we're going to continue to talk about Dream? Thank you. So we are extra lucky this evening in that I'm able to invite my colleague and friend Maggie Bain to join me. Maggie is an actor who took part in the wonderful piece Dream with us. So thank you for joining us this evening, Maggie.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And we're going to start by actually playing a little bit with this environment, because where we're standing, it looks a bit like, well, surely we've only created this part of the forest, but if my wonderful colleague Penny will just bear with us a second. As you can see, we pan the camera off of the stage here. The virtual environment continues. So not only are we actually here in the forest, all of you are truly within the forest. So I just wanted to show that to you. It's the power of Unreal Engine 5 that all of these are created within. So Maggie, would you like to tell everyone a little bit about your role in Dream and the wonderful character you embodied?
Yeah, absolutely. So the concept of Dream was that we would take the 5 sprites out of A Midsummer Night's Dream by Shakespeare and put them into the forest in which that story is told, but that we would see an event that isn't replicated in the play. So in this story, Puck causes some mischief, which results in this forest being destroyed. And so we could talk about a lot of kind of the repercussions of that. We could delve a little bit in a light way into climate change. And within that, I played Cobweb, who manifested as a giant eyeball, an ancient being that lived deep in an oak tree. And that was my job, to figure out how I, as a full human being, bring emotion and story and fear and jeopardy.
But did it start a bit like this, Maggie?
It did start a little bit like this. So I don't have Cobweb to show you right here, but basically it was a giant eyeball. And the things that I could control were the eyelid, how it opened and closed, where the iris was looking, and the dilation of that iris. So as our irises get bigger and smaller depending on how much light we're receiving. And to do that, the brilliant technologists who had designed this incredible avatar came to me as an actor and asked if this would work, if I could just do it like this. And as an actor, your heart sinks a little bit because you're making your RSC debut basically as a sock puppet at that point. But the tricky thing for us as actors using this technology is that, while we say that quite flippantly, this has connotations for us. We've all done this at some point in some way. It has a muscle memory, and that's either because we're telling somebody to stop talking, they're talking too much, or because we're doing stupid voices like this. And And in order for me to convey something truthful, something connected to a deep fear, an emotion, trying to convince Puck to do the right thing, it's hard for me to connect and to communicate using that. So we had to have this little negotiation, and I had to be able to inhabit the character in a much fuller sense. So what we started to play with, our brilliant movement director and I, and my background is in sort of physicality and movement, we came up with a compromise. And the compromise was that I would operate the opening and closing of the eyelid with the distance between my hands. So the volume would detect. I would have all the little markers like you'll see on the people who are going to be demonstrating that later on. The distance would open and close. The distance between my feet would dilate the pupil, and where my head was looking would control the iris. Now that's a tricky thing to do because mechanically I'm doing 3 things at once. And most of the time, humans can really only do one. So to try and do all of those things, what I ended up doing was mechanically controlling that character. And it was actually a massive leap forward from this, so it was great. But what I've been working with the RSC on since then is trying to find ways where we can actually embody my physicality a lot more with these characters, with these avatars, so that we can move you. Because that's the most important thing. These technologies can do wonderful things, but if there's an audience involved, that audience has to experience it, follow it, be engaged, and if those things are missing, then we're not doing our jobs properly. So that's what we're sort of fighting for.
And it was incredible as sort of an outsider, but in that, with only 30 of us allowed into the Guildhall because of COVID regulations and everything else, so many of us were doing things that weren't really part of our job role. And one of the wonders for me was that I got to sit there in that room sometimes when they were working out. Okay, I can't do it, but does that work? How will this work for you as an actor? But also, how would M navigate your web? So of course it's a digital web, and that M had to navigate and looking like they weren't stepping on the web. Do you want to talk a bit about that process and how you were supporting each other as actors through that?
Yeah, so basically as Cobweb, I was a giant spider basically, but you couldn't see the rest of me. And my eyelashes were the webs that spider lives within. So as I was controlling all of these different aspects of the eye, the webs were moving. So as Puck is coming into my space and navigating the webs, if the webs are moving and Puck is just stood still, it doesn't make any sense. And so the technologists at this point, they hadn't quite thought of that because they didn't know how we were going to stage it. So they were watching us do this and they were going, okay, this aspect of the story, it doesn't quite work, so what do? Do we have to program all of this technology? Do we have to go away and reanimate, re-render? So a simple change like that is going to cost you a lot of time and a lot of money. Yep. So we were all stood there going, you know, while they were having this chat and they came back to us and like, okay, we think we can do it, it's going to take this many weeks and this much time and we're going to need to rehearse this. And myself and Em and our movement director, Sarah, we were like, oh, we could just do that for you in like 5 minutes. We could do that ourselves because we have physical skills. We have skills as performers that will allow us to do that. So we invited another member of our acting team into the volume with us who was not marked, because there's only a limited number of actors that you can have. And there's also issues around contact, and we wanted to use contact. So we had Ed support M, and with all of the sort of different weight-taking skills and lifting skills that we have as physical performers, we were able to sort of surf M as Puck over all of these webs. We were able to sort of integrate it, even though we both had to focus on the screens, we were able to sort of find a way to work together, concentrate on this, do all of this, say our lines. There was a lot to it, but we managed it in the end, and I think we saved them quite a bit of money.
I think you did, but it was that collaborative problem-solving process that was so fascinating to all of us, both to technicians, but also to the wider team, really. We all learned so much from working together, and that was the power of collaboration.
Oh, hugely. And now I also teach in this as well, because I've learned so much from the technologies that we've worked with, because as much as I'm sort of saying we as actors, this is tricky and this is tricky, we like tricky. We like having things to hate. The technology isn't something to fight against, but what we have to do is find a way to collaborate. What is the language of all of this? And what is the language of the people that operate all of this? And what is our language? And the more that we talk and communicate, the more we can work together, the more incredible things we can create. And it's so exciting to see all of that coming together under this roof.
And that language is something we could talk about for hours, because if you take a technical rehearsal, that means something very different to your actors, to it does mean to your technical team. Our technical director, Alex Council, was the motion capture supervisor and working closely with this team within the Guildhall. And we had to find that joint language, and that was something that was, you know, a real pleasure, but has helped us all as we move forward with future projects.
Oh, massively, massively. And it's also just about having the time and the space. I remember Alex watching us, because we're used to having a rehearsal room, and then the set's brought in at the last minute. And our rehearsal room was a volume. And of course, we have technologists that we're not used to collaborating with early in the process, sitting there watching what we're doing. And I remember Alex nearly having a heart attack, watching us go through some of the things that we need to do as actors, because we need to build the world in our imaginations, we need to navigate it together. Because if we're not in the same place together as a team, if we're not seeing the same thing in our mind's eye, we're not telling you the same story. So we're playing games, we're doing things that are not going to be in the show, but are very, very important to making it. And poor Alex is going, you can't do that. You can't be over there, and you can't touch like that, and it's just getting used to, oh, okay, that's the process. And same for us, watching what they needed. The time that this takes is a challenge for us as actors, because we like to get into a flow, but the dividends are huge.
It was worth it. I mean, it was an incredible challenge for all of us, but it's probably worth summarising by saying that Dream was seen by 80,000 people in 151 countries, over 10 live performances. We actually went live to Sydney Opera House. Do you remember? 2 o'clock in the morning?
I do.
And I met someone this week who saw it live in Sydney Opera House.
Wow.
When some guests from Western Sydney, Australia, that came to visit us actually saw it when they were out there.
That's amazing.
Thank you so much, Maggie. I could talk to you for hours, but thank you so much for coming to join us this evening. It's very much appreciated.
Thank you for having me.
So if we could, I hate to leave my forest, I could stay here all day, but if we could make our way back to the studio, please, Lena, that would be great. So I think hopefully what we've shown you this evening is just a little insight into some of the wide variety of projects and sectors that we work on. I'd like to invite my colleague, Dr. Adrian Hull, to come and make some concluding remarks with me. Adrian has hurt his leg, so he's doing an incredible job.
Hi, thanks everyone. So I said at the start I felt like a fraud. And why I feel like a fraud is because there's so many amazing things here. So I don't really feel like a fraud. I feel a little bit overwhelmed by the pace of change, and in fact, because of something we're maybe not amazing at saying. But these facilities and some of the people who work here, the expertise that we've amassed, are world-leading, genuinely world-leading. They're not present, they're not available, they're not accessible in other higher education institutions. In Europe, I think there's somewhere in America, isn't there, that has similar facilities. But at the University of Portsmouth, it's genuinely world-leading. That's really exciting, really exciting. The other thing I said was about educating people. That's the mission of a university. It's why we're here. The students are here to learn, and the staff are here to help people learn and to work with other partners. But there's a missing bit to that as well. It's about educating, but it's also about exploring, because great education comes from exploring information, ideas, and things. So with world-class facilities and world-class people, we think that things are teed up really, really well for the university moving forward. And you've seen some of the really incredible things that have happened already today. They've been around cultural heritage and some of the different areas and the projects that have happened over the last few years. Just cast your mind back to Professor Huiyu at the start, who kind of intimated about facial recognition in security. But again, using this suite of facilities and the expertise around it, there are other areas around dentistry, around medicine. It's almost limitless, I think, which is again where it gets a bit scary. But fundamentally, we're quite excited and we're really grateful that you've come to see. So we'll look forward to kind of walking around and showing you a little more informally about some of the facilities that we've got here. And we've got teams of the amazing colleagues and staff here in each of the areas who can kind of answer some questions and kind of just give you the behind the scenes view. And then it's totally your decision, because ultimately What I think we aim for is that all of this technology, all of this hardware, all of the incredible software vanishes. Just like Maggie was talking about. You don't need to know it's there. You can just experience life. And that's what we're really going for. But for the next half an hour or so, we can go and see behind the scenes, I think.
Absolutely. It's just the start of this incredible journey that myself and my colleagues and the incredible team are all on. So I'd like to say a huge thank you to all of this team and those lurking at the back. This would not have been possible without you all. So thank you all very, very much. I would also like to say thank you to all of my academic colleagues and to Maggie for joining us this evening. It's been fascinating to just get that little glimpse into your world. So thank you all very much. And also to our colleagues from marketing, Trudy, Jessica Carter, Jessica Nowell, and everyone else that's made this possible. Thank you very much for enabling us to do this evening. Let's give them a round of applause as well. So to explain the next portion of the evening for you, you will find, if you have a name badge, you will find it has a colour on it. You've been allocated to one of 4 tour groups, so you can come and explore the centre. So my colleagues, Adrian will be taking a tour group, Penny will be taking a tour group, and we have 2 of our VR producers, Mark and Hattie, will be taking tour groups as well. So we'll have people holding up coloured dots. If you could make your way to one of those dots in a second, you'll go on your tour for about 20 minutes, 25 minutes, then you'll regroup back up here where we'll have, this will be transformed back into the forest, so you can take a photo on it, you can have your selfie in the forest for the evening, and there'll be drinks and nibbles up here as well as the opportunity to talk to lots of colleagues. So thank you. We really appreciate you coming to join us this evening, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.